So you have this complete reversal. It's the most dramatic shift in Western history. Still affects us today. Higher, better. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. I'm a pilgrim. And Mary becomes the prime example. We put her up in heaven, Queen of Heaven, Mother of God. But what was she really in her own time? She was a Jewish woman.
James, your book, The Lost Mary, just a wonderful, visionary, kind of radical approach and to rehabilitate Mary, as you've said, as a real Jewish woman in the first century. The historical recovery that you do seems to be in significant tension with the way of thinking of Mary in the religious world, of veneration, piety, virginity, perpetual devotion, kind of a mystical figure. Your positioning of Mary is so antithetical to that. What are the implications of that for much of Christianity?
I would want to set it in a very broad context, not just Mary, but she can become our prime example of this. And that is in what we call the early Roman period, the Hellenistic period. There's this tendency, not just among the Christians, but widespread philosophically thinking about what we call Neoplatonism. So it's a Platonism, but it's a new kind of Platonism that values what is called holiness, and we would probably even today say heavenliness, meaning the earth is the lower part of the world, and we are flesh and blood humans. And if you take it all the way up, we're trapped in this lower world, and we really belong in heaven. And so to have your prime woman, who's going to represent the Queen of Heaven, have any kind of earthly life is a problem. Now, she has to have some kind of earthly life because she has to birth Jesus, but it's non-sexual. And then you have to just picture in everyday life. Later, the church fathers just turn this all the way up, not towards Gnosticism, saying it was evil to be human, but Mary's so perfect, she never goes to the toilet, to put it politely. Well, how could that be? Because she was fed by angels and she ate such a perfect amount of food and water that she's flesh and blood, but there's no need for elimination. Well, now we're in a different world that values the heavenly world as higher and better. But as you know, growing up in a Jewish background, this world is the place to be. I love the Robert Frost poem Birches. You know, you go up the birch tree and then you ride back down. And he ends the poem by saying, the earth's the right place to be. I don't know where it's likely to go better. And this is a very Genesis concept. The world is good, 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 very good. I think that's 7. And be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Suddenly, we fast forward thousands of years, and people are saying the ideal life would not be to be married and have children and live in this world, but to live an ascetic life, to deny the flesh, to only look towards the heavenly world. My favorite church father is Augustine, and you read his Confessions. It's a wonderful book. Everybody should read it because it's psychological, it's autobiographical. And he says, I would sleep on the floor. And if I heard beautiful music, I would turn it off because I didn't want to be attached to this world. But the biblical view, the Hebrew view of life, is l'chaim, right? To life. Drink and eat and celebrate. It's more of an ancient Near Eastern view that comes into the Hebrew Bible. So Mary is part and parcel of that sort of development of what I would call Greek dualism. Remember Plato? When you die, you should be sad to leave the world. And what does Plato say about Socrates? Weep not for me, Weep for yourselves. You're the ones that have to stay behind in this dark, fallen world. I'm going to the world of light. So you have this complete reversal. It's the most dramatic shift in Western history. Still affects us today. Every religion that I know of, every religion, including Judaism, except for the Hebrew Bible itself, uh, follows this reversal. Higher, better. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. I'm a pilgrim. And Mary becomes the prime example. We put her up in heaven, Queen of Heaven, Mother of God. But what was she really in her own time? She was a Jewish woman. So I think that's
You allude, of course, to your famous teacher at the University of Chicago, Jonathan Z. Smith, and he used the contrast, the locative with utopia, locative meaning location of Earth, and this switch. And to look at the development of religion through those two perspectives really gives very deep insight. And as you're saying, you use Mary as the prototype to explore that tension and that significant reversal.
he was the most brilliant man I've ever known, and I was privileged to study with him. But he was also down to earth, very human, very wonderful. I've had him here in my home right here to lecture and spent hours with him. But what he argued was the locative, and I love the term. He made these up. These are his terms. Means you're located. You're where you ought to be. The earth's Robert Frost again. The earth's the place to be. Humans are dust creatures that go back to the dust. They're not heavenly beings fallen into the world of darkness. This is not a dark world. It's a world of light and life. Death is the dark phase. So you reverse that and you begin to think of death as birth. Your death is a birth into the eternal world. The oldest text I know, Robert, and we could date it maybe 4th, 5th century BC, it's written on gold foil. There are about 17 of these. They're found in graves and tombs. They're rolled up like a little tube and put by the deceased ear. And in that little poem, it's what you're going to say in the afterlife. You meet the powers of the underworld because the Greeks still thought you have to go down, but your goal is to get out of that through reincarnation or through ascent to heaven. And what does this say, this little prayer? I'm a child of earth and starry heaven, but heaven alone is my home. Isn't that
Mm,
an interesting little
mm,
phrase?
mm,
Heaven is my home. I grew up in the Christian evangelical church. All the songs, I'm a pilgrim, I'm passing through, the world
mhm,
is not my home. Jews don't sing songs like that because their songs come from the Bible and from the Psalms and so forth. And they tend to be more about the world. It's not like you're denying another dimension could exist beyond this world. You're a scientist. It's sort of quasi scientific in a primitive way. In other words,
mm,
this is reality. Let's discuss this reality. And someone says, well, what about maybe the soul survives and there could be something else? And let's talk about that. You've done dozens and dozens of programs on this. And the Hebrew view, the ancient Hebrew view would be, first of all, you couldn't even understand it if there was such a thing.
mhm,
The secret things belong to God, but also it's sort of none of your business. In other words, the Job
mm,
thing. Remember, Job
mm,
says,
yeah.
because of all his suffering, I wish that a human could rise again. If a man dies, shall he live again? Is the eternal question. And Job is longing for it, but he doesn't say he believes it. He's aspiring to that. And so I think that shift is so important that notice the people know the Lord's Prayer, even non-Christians know it. Let your kingdom come. Next phrase, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The kingdom of God is on earth. All the texts of the Hebrew Bible, it's not away somewhere else that you need to go. This is your home, but it's a world that's been completely ruined by human failure and could be wonderful. So that's sort of where she fits in.
So, what does that imply about some of the mainstream Christian religions today? Certainly, the Catholic Church, which you went to the University of Notre Dame, Our Lady. How will they would react to what you're saying?
I think the scholars are aware of this trend, and philosophically and scientifically, maybe they might even appreciate it. Depends on their own point of view. You've dealt with so many scientists that want to go a little beyond the four physical laws or so-called materialism and so forth, and project dimensions of consciousness or whatever beyond. But it comes down to what can we really know? In some odd way, the locative view that's still preserved in the Hebrew Bible of all things, it doesn't really shift much in the Hebrew Bible. There's one of my favorite verses is in Ecclesiastes, it's called, which you would expect. That's that kind of skeptical book. And it says, who knows whether the spirit of man goes up and the spirit of beasts go down? So what they're picking up on is this idea that humans are somehow we're superior to the other creatures on the world. And here's this writer in the Bible going, you don't know that. Maybe, but you don't know. Well, this is it's sort of a quasi scientific view that the things that I don't know, I could try to find out, but I can't affirm them if I don't have the evidence. And I think it's kind of remarkable that that book survives. Now, if you add all the other material to it and tradition and so forth, even Judaism, talks about the world to come, and there's a lot about that world and traditions and lore. So Mary remains for me a locative person who is reminding us of family, marriage, children, kingdom of God on earth, not in heaven. And especially this egalitarian society. That's now, here and now.
You even mentioned that the search for the historical real Mary has implication even for Judaism. Judaism, as we know, was transformed very dramatically from the Hebrew Bible with contact with Hellenistic religions, and you've gone through that in great detail. So that the rabbinic traditions, as expressed in not in the Torah, but in the later commentaries, the Talmud, the Gemara, Mishnah, Gemara, are very different and express this same type of dualistic kind of spiritual transformation that you don't find as much in the original text.
Yes, that is the case. But for some reason, probably because of the Hebrew Bible and the cycle of readings and so forth, it continues to be more grounded in the culture so that you'll even hear lots of non-Jews say, now, Jews don't really believe in heaven or hell or afterlife, right? So they've got some idea that it's different. You would never say that about Christians. You guys don't believe in afterlife or judgment, do you? Of course you wouldn't think that. So even though some of these things are within the oral tradition and the developments about Elijah appearing and God talking in heaven and all kinds of things going on up there, uh, there's still very much of an emphasis within the culture that the purpose of the religion is to perfect the world. It's called tikkun ha'olam. I'm sure you know
Mm-hmm.
that term. Not let's go to heaven and escape the world. It's escape versus this is where you are, the place, but make it into the paradise that it potentially could be. Nobody should ever be killed and murdered on this planet. There should be no wars whatsoever. There should be people learning to treat each other and love their neighbor as themselves. There should be no stealing, no lying, no cheating. I almost said no politics. You see, and you say, well, that's impossible. Well, why is it impossible? We all mouth the ideals. So I even I'm not saying Mary escapes the Hellenistic world. Of course she doesn't. Jesus talks about resurrection and the world to come. We're not denying that. But what I'm saying is, what does Jesus build? My favorite story, he's teaching a class to the boys, just like a rabbi. Two women, Mary and Martha, are in the kitchen. making them food for the men. So, this is my grandmother's time, and even my mother a little bit. Mary comes in. This is Mary Magdalene, I think, maybe, but she's called Mary, and sits with the men. She's in the class now. We'd say she's registered for the course. How did that happen? Co-ed education did not hit Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Look it up. It's very late. I think it's into the 20th century, isn't it? I believe it is.
Yeah.
Because the girls had their school nearby, and so the sister Martha comes in and says, Master, could you tell Mary to come in? I'm trying to fix things for the dinner. And he says, Martha, Martha, I'm going to paraphrase, sit down. The dinner's fine. Mary's chosen the best thing right now that she could do. Almost like Joiner. Now look at the implications of this. That's not heaven, that's now. Women and men should be together, male and female, rich and poor, slaves and free. This is the great thing about the Christian movement. Paul picks this up, and he recognizes within the society there are these distinctions, but in the gatherings, they should all be one. Doesn't matter how much money you have. James, the brother of Jesus, I think he learns this from his mother. I can't prove it. If a poor man comes into your synagogue, and he uses the word synagogue, isn't that interesting? Not church. In the New Testament, sit him in the back. We've got a lot of donors and important people up front. No, bring them right up to the front. Put him in the most expensive pew you've got or whatever. And he says, because God has chosen those rich in faith who are heirs of the kingdom, you see. So that great reversal of caring for the poor, it's embedded in the Hebrew Bible, there's no doubt. But now it's being spread in an egalitarian way, and it's revolutionary. And I think that probably is why he finally gets killed. It's very disruptive to a culture to have this kind of social preaching.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like and comment below. You can support Closer to Truth by subscribing. Closer to Truth is now accepting your tax-exempt donations. Please come to closertotruth.com/donate. Thank you very much for supporting us, and thanks for watching.